They're the worst of the worst. 400 violent repeat offenders, and they're all kids. These hardcore teens are tearing families apart and causing havoc. So how do we fix it? Commander of Queensland's Youth Crime Task Force is George Marchesini. I spoke to him a short time ago. George, I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. We should all feel safe in our own homes, including you and your family. Do you?
We should be, feeling safe in our homes, as you pointed out. And I think community can feel safe, generally. But obviously we see things playing out in community at the moment with a small cohort of children and youth that are committing some really serious crime. And at the worst extent, resulting in death.
Yeah, I think there were those two defining moments when you had Todai Kefu and his family. They were attacked in their home. And it frightened everyone because this is a big rugby union international. And if he's not safe, I think people thought, who is? And then Emma Lovell was killed, and she was at home with her kids asleep at night. That shook people to the core.
The bottom line is any incident like that is one incident too many, and they're terrible tragedies that happen in community, but it has that flow-on impact right across that gives that perception around that, it's feeling unsafe.
You're talking about this being just a small group. Who is this core group and how old are they?
We've got, as young as 14, some outliers in there obviously, but they're a small core group, and when I talk about a small core group, we're talking about serious repeat offenders. And a lot of them really, they come from really, some fairly hard backgrounds, and I'm not making excuses. Our priority is always going to be community safety.
You made the point there that these kids come from horrible homes, they've had horrible lives, but they've also committed horrific crimes. So at what point do you say, we just lock them up? And do you say we lock them up for good?
Obviously, we don't want to be seeing kids in watch houses, but what we don't want to see is obviously the incident occur in the first place. That prevention and disruption is really important. Hence why you see some of the initiatives that are coming out around high visibility policing, ensuring that we've got police not just out in numbers, but out in the right areas, out in those hot spots that we know. So that's really important, but that's just one of many strategies that we need to be looking at and ensuring that we enhance that.
And I think all of those programs that are happening behind the scenes are brilliant programs, but the problem you've got, George, is that you have a lot of people right now who do not feel safe when they're inside their home, in their bedrooms, at night, with the doors locked.
The work of the task force has arisen because of the most extreme deaths that have arisen in community. So I can certainly understand community angst around that when they see that.
When you talk about a small number, are you talking about 10, 20, 50, 100, 500 kids?
We're talking up around, it fluctuates around the 400 mark in terms of children that we're focusing on. So when we sort of talk about serious repeat offenders, that's where it fluctuates around. And when I say fluctuates, because once again we have got children that we have had success with.
It's a big number, isn't it?
Yeah. So when I probably talk about a small number, I'm talking about in comparison, obviously, to our unique offenders, which obviously are in the thousands. We've seen, and this is the other issue, we've seen a decline in terms of unique offenders. That's something we have seen in Queensland. So something is going right there. But what we've also seen, though, is that we've seen some of the crime increase, as you've pointed out. And one of the challenges is trying to get a better understanding of why is that happening? Why are we seeing that happening in community?
Yeah, but education and prevention is not going to work with some of these kids, is it?
Look, it's going to be very difficult, can I say, the investment in that. So once again, it's around identifying those kids that we can actually do something with, and that takes a lot of work. But yes, it's going to be looking at, well, what are those children that we know that are going to be problematic, and then what do we do with that if they are released back in the community?
I think it's important for people to realise that youth crime across the board is going down. It's just this particular group that is so difficult to deal with. There has been so much focus on Queensland, but we saw youth crime hit the headlines in WA and Victoria this week. Is it a bigger issue in your state?
So I think it's an issue in our state, without doubt. When you look at the social media influence and the ability for offenders seeking that notoriety that's something that you're not going to be able to contain within, a jurisdiction. So of course it's going to, ripple across, across not just our nation, but even globally.
So do you think when we see these kids stealing cars and then they're live streaming it on social media, do you think that's then encouraging copycats?
I think it definitely has some sort of impact. And our biggest concern is obviously those next cohort of children that sit behind the serious repeat offenders, the impact on that, and that's something we're keeping a very close eye on.
Look, I get it, there's no easy resolution, and if there had been, we would have seen it by now. And everyone's debating this issue, politicians, justice groups, vigilantes, but you are seeing it firsthand. How do you fix it?
What I do know is that we need to be ensuring that as police on front line, we've got the ability to ensure that we can obviously take action, take strong action, and there's a deterrent factor. That's one component of it. But the other component is also, and you heard me talk about, what are those children that are entering the system now that are going to be there in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Because if we don't look at that, we're going to end up with a problem that's going to be much more exacerbated than what we have.
It is your officers out each night doing the hard work. How are they coping?
Yeah, there's a sense of frustration because they're the ones dealing with these victims one-on-one, going to the crime scenes, then obviously, having to follow up on that.
George, I know you've been travelling the state, you've been talking to all different types of groups and officers on the ground. You really care about this issue. Thank you for your time, we really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ali.